Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. I hope you're doing really well on this Wednesday. This is going to be a new show slash preview look ahead to tomorrow night's semi-final second leg against Djurgården. We've actually got quite a bit of news to get through. Moises Caicedo, new contract. We've got Todd Boehly, more quotes about the stadium situation. We've got news about the Club World Cup. We've also got more news about Dean Huijsen. And as I said, before we do wrap up today's show, I want to get through some of the quotes from Enzo Maresca. We'll talk about the game and kind of my feeling about it, and hopefully it will be a plain sailing evening where Chelsea will make it to another European final. So please like, subscribe. If you're new around here, please do not only share the video, get involved in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast feed and you enjoy what you're hearing, please do give us a positive rating review. Check out the content that's already on the show this week. We reacted extensively to the big Liverpool win. I responded to your comments yesterday, so hopefully you can go and support that and enjoy it. But yeah, let's jump into it. Firstly, with Moises Caicedo. So this was reported after the Liverpool game by Matt Law that Caicedo is next in line for a new Chelsea contract, with talks expected this summer. Apparently, Caicedo is not the only player Chelsea will consider rewarding over the summer, with the club to evaluate the performances of all of their squad once the season ends. Apparently, players could receive an approximate 20% pay rise if the club seal Champions League qualification. That means that the first team squad can effectively trigger pay increases by clinching a top 5 place in the final 3 games of the season. There is, however, no extra bonus prize pot on offer for qualifying for the Champions League. Caicedo, like with a lot of Chelsea players, right, are on these ridiculously long contracts. So we're not talking about someone who is coming up to the final 2 years of their deal. Caicedo only signed in 2023, so already it's one of those things where we're talking about a long-term deal with him at Chelsea. But I think it signals obviously the importance of Moises Caicedo and how huge he's been for Chelsea, and actually how he's been a success at the club. My hope is generally right is that in terms of Caicedo, what you want, what Chelsea should be aiming for, is not looking at these players as, well, we're tying them up for longer deals so then we can sell them off for profit. You don't. That's not the ambition of an elite club. An elite club is one that has these players for the prime years of their career, and when you let them go, when they leave, you've got the best years of their career. That is what Chelsea have always been at their best. Is the greatest example is someone like Eden Hazard, right? We got the best years out of Eden Hazard. He goes to Real Madrid. It's a massive blow. But if you look at what Eden did post leaving Chelsea, it's nowhere close to what he did whilst he was at Chelsea. And that's what you want as a big club. It shows that you're one of the big fish. You're near the top of the food chain because, you're not losing these players when they're entering their prime. And I think that's why it's so key that Chelsea qualify for the Champions League, because the less you're in the Champions League, the less you're competing for serious titles. The likes of Caicedo, the likes of Cole Palmer are going to get to a stage where they're going to be leaving you before you want them to. And I think that's why Chelsea probably want to have a new contract with Caicedo, tie him down even more, but hopefully that leads to Chelsea actually challenging more, because the level Caicedo plays at and the ambition of him personally, you can't keep these players around for years and years if you're not doing anything serious. That's just the reality. So I think that's a positive, and hopefully that'll be wrapped up, and I think would be the icing on top of a pretty good cake for Caicedo this year. The top player, best player, player of the year, all of that good stuff. And then a new contract to go with it as well. So Todd Boehly has given some more quotes about the stadium. And I saw that Hans Borgvis said some things to a Chelsea channel post the Liverpool game, and was talking about Earls Court. These are just interesting quotes. I don't want to spend too long on this because we're going roundabouts with the stadium, right? But I think what this signals to me, because the Twickenham thing came up again recently, and you kind of just sit there and you have to come back to reality over and over again with this situation. The reality of the obstacles that not only they face in redeveloping Stamford Bridge, if that's the idea for the long term, but also moving stadium, and also convincing the CPO if you want to move stadium, and convincing people based on your plans and proposals, which still haven't been put forward to to a broad extent, for people to look at. But the headline is Chelsea fans may need to wait until 2042 for the new stadium. He said he told Bloomberg, who he's given quotes to before, it's years until plans to come to fruition in the making. When we originally bought the club, we agreed initially that we had 15 or 20 years to figure this out, but it is a big project in a really interesting city like London, where there's a lot of constituencies that have an opinion. Obviously, the number one constituency for us is our fan base, what's going to be best for Chelsea. I think everyone recognises that a club as big as Chelsea should have a stadium that reflects the size of the club, and ultimately that's going to be a strategic advantage. The Earls Court site does feel like an opportunity that if Chelsea pass on, I'm not entirely sure what's going to come up between now and 2042 that's going to be better than that. I really don't, unless you are looking broader in like outside of the Chelsea kind of area, which again I don't think fans would go for. There's still opposition even to moving to Earls Court. That's my one concern, and also in terms of redeveloping Stamford Bridge, I'm not entirely sure what changes structurally of how awkward it is to redevelop Stamford Bridge stand by stand, or however they would theoretically go about it, because we've heard up to 7 years away from Stamford Bridge. I don't know how time changes those two things. Like, I think in the case of Earls Court, if that opportunity goes, then you're looking around the other areas, like maybe things will crop up, but I'm not entirely sure where close within the vicinity of Stamford Bridge in West London. That's what makes Stamford Bridge a very unique stadium in England, especially, is, you go to a majority of stadiums, particularly ones outside of London, but even, not just talking about up north, I'm talking, you go to Brighton Stadium in the south, you go to many stadiums. When I think about all the away days I've been on, nearly all of them, it's just wild how different the landscape is outside of Chelsea, because it's so crammed, it's so, very much within the hub of a city, compared to usually a lot of football stadiums are on the outskirts of a city. In London, for a club like Chelsea, you don't have that advantage. Chelsea fans are not going to be happy if Chelsea are moved outside of West London. Brentford, their stadium's quite crammed in to where they are, and they've made the best of it. But I think that's what makes it an awkward one. But, are you happy to wait until 2042? There is also the external kind of thing of other clubs moving and building their own new stadiums that I know concerns people about Chelsea's ability to compete at the highest level. So let me know your thoughts on that. A couple other things here. So the Club World Cup, we know that Club Lyon were taken out of the competition, and we were waiting to see whether that was going to be clarified, because we're not too far away now from the opening Club World Cup game. And now we know there's going to be a one-game playoff after it went through CAS, that Club Lyon have been rejected from the competition because their ownership also owns another Mexican club. And it is going to be a playoff between LAFC and Club America, who of course Chelsea have played a number of times in pre-season, will take place on May the 31st at BMO Field. And the winner of that will join Chelsea's group. So a bit more clarity on that. I want to hear, I know some of my listeners and viewers come from America. If any of you are going actually to the Club World Cup, because maybe a double opportunity if you live nearer to America, or if you live in America, to actually go and watch a Chelsea game. So let me know in the comments below if you're actually heading out there and going to get to see Chelsea live in the flesh, or if you're UK based and you're planning on going to the Club World Cup. I'm quite interested, because obviously we'll be doing a lot of content around it this summer. Simon Phillips reported today that Chelsea are the first suitor apparently to present a project to Dean Huijsen. And apparently Chelsea are really the only ones to lay down a project and package to Huijsen and his reps. To date, Simon Phillips reports that no other suitor has gone as far as doing this. Chelsea are absolutely pushing the most right now and are feeling confident of getting their priority centre-back target for the summer. Apparently his reps, Huijsen that is, have reacted positively to the proposals and project. Even his father, who's been keen for him to join Liverpool over the other interested parties. Apparently a decision won't be made until the end of the season. Dean Huijsen remains kind of the standout candidate for Chelsea's centre-back push this summer, but more and more from what I'm hearing, and this may just be noise at this point or kind of wild ambition from Chelsea, it seems like they want to sign more than just one new centre-back, and Hato from Ajax has been brought up. Someone brought up a comment yesterday, and this is not based on reports. He hasn't actually been like properly linked to Chelsea, but Tar from Bayer Leverkusen, and there have been other names as well. Mark Gurhey linked to Chelsea. Dean Huijsen scored against Arsenal at the weekend. So he has continued to impress. When you score a goal like that against a Chelsea rival, people are going to like you even more. I've never been, against Dean Huijsen as like he's a crap player. Why would you want to sign him? I just more and more, when I look at the performances of Trevor Chalobah, I just think maybe a question for you guys. Like, do you think some of these players are hyped up to be better than Chelsea players because they actually are, or because people get told they're better than they are, or kind of, Chelsea are signing them, so it's kind of like this transfer dopamine PR where it's like they have to be better because they're a new shiny player. If Dean Huijsen had come through Chelsea's academy and was kind of fulfilling the role that Trev is right now, and Trev was at Bournemouth, would it be the other way around? That's always my big thing about this, of kind of the false football economy and kind of the branding and perception, and there's always a better player to sign all of the time, even if logically the new transfer isn't always the best thing. But that can be kind of a wider narrative, wider conversation. But also, Dean Huijsen, factually, in terms of when you look at the numbers for him this season, has had an impressive season for a team that you don't suspect to be high up in the Premier League. They have still had a good season, even if it has kind of petered out compared to what it looked like a few months ago for Areola, who of course has done a really good job there. So I feel like Dean Huijsen and also Liam Delap's gone a bit quiet. These are kind of two names that you feel like will be imminent in terms of where they're going. It feels like the release clause for Liam Delap from Ipswich is going to be triggered by someone, you suspect, and he'll stay in the Premier League. And Dean Huijsen, I think both of these players, we will know their destinations probably, I suspect, before July maybe. It could be that quick. And maybe Chelsea are trying to get both done before the summer. That's just speculation, that's just guessing on my part. I think Chelsea need to act quickly. I keep on saying this. I've been planning out my end of season content. We will do content looking at what I would do for this summer transfer window, because I've seen some people start to bring it up and how they would break down each area, and I think it's quite interesting, and I like doing it on the show. And whether Dean Huijsen would be in your kind of dream 11, if you're thinking up already like what is going to be a great Chelsea transfer window, if we hope we can get one this summer, would Dean Huijsen be a part of that? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So obviously tomorrow is Djurgården, the second leg at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea with a 3-goal advantage after the 4-1 victory out in Sweden last week. It's obviously in some ways similar vibes to the Legia Warsaw second leg, where you're kind of quite confident going into the game, thinking, well, this should really be a dead rubber. The difference this time is what's around the Conference League games has obviously changed. Going into that Legia Warsaw game, second leg, we had just failed to beat Ipswich. We had failed to beat Brentford. There was a lot more scrutiny. The vibe around the club was very different to what it is right now. We've just beaten Liverpool. We obviously won the first leg confidently. We beat Fulham. We beat Everton. There's a feeling of upwards trajectory about things at the moment. Maresca in his press conference, I thought he did give some good quotes. And maybe it's a case of like, it's easy to take these quotes after you've just beaten Liverpool, but it's also probably easier when you're Enzo Maresca, who's been on a lot of scrutiny, to speak when you've just won a big game. I think both of those things are true. And he spoke about, picking the strongest 11. I think it's a delicate balancing act because you've got Newcastle away on Sunday at 12. And we found out after the Liverpool game that Chelsea actually got back quite late from the first leg of Djurgården, and then of course produced a brilliant performance against Liverpool. And that game's huge against Newcastle. It really is. It's luckily it's no longer a must win, but I think it is a must not lose. I think that Chelsea, just psychologically, if you can walk away from Sunday unbeaten, you're in a good position. I really do think that, even if you can't control what happens in other games, I suspect that Nottingham Forest will beat Leicester at home. But at the very least, you've gone away from Newcastle, you've at least stopped them from winning a game, and hopefully if Liverpool beat Arsenal, you're dragging them maybe back into the conversation. So it's kind of that balancing act between these two games, right, of you want to have a situation where Chelsea get the job done quite concretely tomorrow night. We don't get anywhere close to Legia Warsaw in terms of what that second leg was, which was just devastating. It was depressing. It was embarrassing. I want to see those fringe players, if they do start and come in, to impress, which they did in some ways in the first leg last week. I think that Reece James will probably start the game, and it's weird there's been a debate about this, and we may do another show entirely about Reece, but I think Reece James will start this game. I think Tyreek George will start this game. I suspect that Jadon Sancho as well will start this game, who's obviously not been playing badly recently. So there's still, in terms of like momentum of players, I think there is obviously some good players who can start this game and hopefully do what they did last week. And because it's a 3-goal advantage, because Chelsea are feeling confident, I think the mood inside the Bridge will be a lot better than the Warsaw game was, just based off what has just happened at the Bridge against Liverpool. I think Chelsea will hopefully just confidently and comfortably get the job done. We're nearly in the final, and then you're one step away from lifting silverware, which was the whole point of this competition. Chelsea have to win this competition, and hopefully that will propel us forward. I just would like to see Tyreek George get significant minutes. I'd like to see Josh Achimpong get significant minutes. And hopefully, get through the game unscathed. Rotate as much as you can feasibly. Rest as many key players as you can is kind of my feeling about this, because you basically got the job done last week. You gave yourself that buffer of a 3-goal advantage, and given that Djurgården will have to commit a lot more men forward in this game, and the defensive frailties, they clearly had self-inflicted wounds last week, I think there will absolutely be chances there for Chelsea to exploit and score more goals. So nearly there. That's just my fault. I didn't really want to do a full preview on it because there was other news to break down, and as well, it's kind of hard with these games because Chelsea are not only so much the favourites, but it's kind of weird because you're unsure how Maresca is going to line up for these games. He could do what he did against Warsaw, start really strong and then rotate, or he could go with, I think it's far more likely he starts with the team that looks very similar to the one that started last Thursday, and then maybe he brings some players off. He, gets some players, more first-team players off the bench, and then gives them some minutes to get them ready for the weekend. Because obviously, all focus is on qualifying for the Champions League. So please like, subscribe. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. Go over to my Substack and check the work out there if you want to get some written content about Chelsea FC. Follow across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.